Welcome to the Cultivating Business Growth podcast, bringing you bi-weekly discussions designed to help you grow your business and create the lifestyle you desire. Elevate your business with proven strategies from virtual CFOs, CPAs, and business advisors. We discuss real-world challenges solved with actionable steps that get you the results you need both in business and building the life you deserve.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Cultivating Business Growth. Today, we're going to be talking about how burnout shows up financially in your business. Burnout doesn't just affect your energy. It impacts your revenue, decision-making, and long-term growth. In this episode, we explore how burnout quietly shows up in your financials and what business owners can do to build healthier, more sustainable success. Our guest today is Amy Vetter, CPA, yogi, and CEO of the B3 Method Institute, and author of multiple books focused on mindful leadership, business growth, and creating sustainable success. Amy helps leaders integrate mindfulness, financial clarity, and intentional decision-making so they can build businesses without burning out in the process. Her work helping leaders creates healthier, more sustainable businesses. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited about this conversation. I think it's really important. And life is hectic and busy. And, as women, as business owners, as moms, we're doing a lot of things and burnout is real. So I'm excited to have this conversation. I think it's important to know that it exists, it's real, and how we can address it.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in. What burnout actually looks like in a business. Can you help define burnout from a leadership business perspective?
Yeah. So what is interesting in the research that I do on this type of topic is that sometimes we don't think of burnout this way, but burnout happens in our highest performers, the people that are most dedicated to their work. It's because they care that they end up burning out. So when there's lack of resources, meaning people, technology, whatever it is, they take it on without speaking up many times. And if they do speak up and they're told no, they just keep doing it until they get to a point where they have exited. So we kind of look at it as in three parts, where someone comes into your organization excited and totally ready to take on this role and can't wait to see where their career is going to go with your business. And then there's lack of resources, lack of people, or they're getting too many projects thrown on their plate at the same time. We see that so much right now with AI is like, keep doing everything you're doing. However, do it again with AI at the same
Right.
time. And they don't necessarily have the time to do that or space to do that. So then they go to exhaustion and you start seeing them show up tired. They're talking about being tired. They're talking about being overworked. And then they exit. And so there are points in that journey where we could be taking action or being more observant of what's going on and really brainstorm with our teams of how we can help. But when we ignore it, it doesn't change the outcome of exit.
Yeah. It's just, well, and I think those high performers are only willing to take it for so long, right? Because they are driven. They want to be successful. They want to work hard and see good results. And so when they hit that wall,
yes,
easy to say, just no, that's not for me.
Yeah.
What do you see as some of those early warning signs that often get normalized?
Well, I think what gets normalized is lack of resources. And, it's like, well, this is the way that it is. And that's, the way that it's always been. I had to go through it too. So you're hearing those kinds of answers coming to that person. However, that is the moment where you can stop and really talk about the things that would help the situation. So if you're in a professional services business, a lot of times where I see it happen so much is we're not charging enough. And so we just keep on taking more clients, more clients, more clients.
Mhm.
And it's not necessarily profitable, but we're not adding more people as we do it. And it's creating this cycle of someone just getting overworked where it's just like work is getting piled on top. And it's not necessarily the most profitable work. And so that's usually an easy place that you can attack if you're willing to, of
Mhm.
really looking at, what are your value drivers in your business and
Mhm.
what should your pricing be based on the market today, no matter if it's a product, a service, whatever it is. And it doesn't mean because you have less customers that you are doing worse. It's
Right.
really about quality and it's about value. And someone will pay more if they're getting the value that they need.
Yes, I love that. And yeah, something as a business owner, as we talk through this, these are all things as a business owner you want to watch out for and try to figure out, hey, how do I address this if I think my team is starting to be burnt out? How can we shift that? How can I make sure they're opening up and we're having conversations and not just leaving, because that's easier.
Exactly. And so if you're on a meeting with someone and they're talking about how tired they are, or how they worked all
Right.
weekend, or they worked till midnight last night, instead of ignoring that, is really pausing and having those conversations, or maybe taking it offline after the meeting and asking
Mhm.
what's causing that to happen, because that's not your intention. I remember when I was a partner in a CPA firm, I used to go out to clients all day, eat dinner with my kids, and then I would start working again at 8 o'clock. And so there were like emails piled up and so forth. And I would send out emails at night. This is, of course, before scheduled emails. So now we do have a way around this. However, one day at a staff meeting, I kind of heard a group on the side talking about the 8 o'clock emails. And I heard it and I'm like, are they talking about me? And I walked over to them and I said, are you talking about my 8 o'clock emails? And they said, yeah. And I said, I wasn't intending for you to have to answer those. It's just when I was getting to my email. And, I really had to step back and think about it, because the problem is that if you're a leader and you make a request on your staff people, they're going to think they need to show you they're staying on top of it, even if
Mhm.
that wasn't your intention for them
Right.
to
Yeah.
answer it right there. And so I really had to look at my own behaviors to be able to streamline that, so I wasn't inadvertently causing something that
Right.
I wasn't intending, right?
Yeah, and I do think that's important as far as culture within your team, because yeah, like you're trying to balance, right? You're like, I'm trying to
Hmm.
make it work. I'm not trying to create more work for other people at this specific time. You're trying to have balance, but they're seeing it as, requirements. Like, now I need you to be doing this
Because
at this
they have
time.
to stay
So
up
I,
late.
I
Yeah.
think it's important to have, within our team, we have really good culture of, we don't want you on the clock 24/7. We don't need you to answer this immediately. We do need you to answer it timely. Like, we do
Yes.
want to have that. We don't want things just sitting around, but knowing that, hey, we are flexible. We want you to have flexibility. Don't feel like if you get an email from me at this time, you have to respond immediately. We also like to do that with our clients. Be careful about your client expectations. Don't respond to every text and email you get from them within 2 minutes,
Hmm.
because then in a month or two, when you have more
Discipline.
work, you can't respond that quickly. Now they feel like they're losing something. Like, wait, you
Yes.
used to be so quick to respond. So we try to look at it, like you said, from a higher perspective. Like, what is the communication to the other side, the
Yeah.
other party, and what does that mean to them? And again, we want to be timely. That's, still very important, but we can't always respond within 2 minutes. We can't always answer right away. Like, so just trying to make sure everybody knows that's the accepted, you know, communication timeline, then everybody feels a little bit better.
And I think that's a key thing, is that transparency, right?
Yes.
Like these things have to be discussed and talked about, and
Mhm.
what is the standard operating procedure, and not just making the assumption of what someone
Right.
expects. And, everyone's got a perceived reality. And so if you don't clear that up and make it
Mhm.
like crystal clear what the
Right.
expectations are of the business, these things can start happening and you don't even intend them to.
Yeah. Yep. Very true. All right. So let's talk more about the financial cost of burnout. How does burnout show up financially inside the business?
In huge ways. So there's been global workplace studies of the billions of dollars globally that are lost over burnout of employees. You know, it's an energy thing, right? Like,
Hmm.
so if I show up tired, exhausted, frustrated, I'm going to start the meeting talking about it. Everyone else is going to start comparing stories. And now I've just taken that meeting and gone, whew, like it's just all the energy has crushed out of the meeting. So we're not even focused on what the meeting's about in the beginning because we're
Right.
so focused on the lack of energy that we have and exhaustion.
Hmm.
And then the place financially that I've seen it is that number one, when you lose team members, to replace a person in your business, on average, it costs 1.5 to 2 times their salary. And
Yeah.
the reason for that is because all the time that it takes to train them, so you're losing that person, that you're replacing that
Hmm.
person with, but then other people on the team have to help to get that person back up to speed and the lost time of that. And if you're dealing with outside customers or clients, then there's a shift in that relationship. And, that can be risky for the business as well. So it really helps with, customer retention, employee retention when you're more cognizant about this and really focused on it. But it has been found overall that your revenue is going to increase when your employees are more engaged. And the biggest difference of your employees being engaged is your leaders. So you can put in all these well-being programs and have really nice marketing material about it and recruiting material about it. But if the leaders don't buy into it in your business, and they're not following it. And so like you were saying, we tell them don't work on the weekends and so forth. But if their direct line manager is, then they're going to think that's the expectation. They don't
Hmm.
care what the leader of the business is saying if their direct boss
Right.
is not demonstrating those behaviors. When the direct boss is demonstrating those behaviors of the organization and the culture, then the business becomes more profitable because everyone's happier and they have more energy while they're at work. And we call that being fulfilled at work, right? And we've
Yeah.
got 4 quadrants that we kind of look at of where a business is at. So if you imagine an axis of business and balance, like
Yes.
this, in that lower left-hand corner, there is what we call the crisis zone of low business, low balance. The company's probably not going to exist. And then we have up at the top of a high business, low balance. So you're just churning people out, working them as hard as possible, but then you've got so much turnover and so forth. But then we also have on the other side where there's businesses that go too far on balance, right? Like everything's about being the employee being happy, but not a focus
At
on
all on
the
the or
work.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Need
oh,
some.
we don't want to upset them. So we're not going to focus on, we're not going to push them too hard and there's still objectives that have to be met in an organization. So where you want to be is that crossroads of high business, high balance, that both are important in the organization and people understand the work that they do, how that levels up to the key objectives and goals of the organization, so they know their work matters, they're excited about it, and they're fulfilled by their careers.
Yeah, and that's no small task.
No.
But it's the goal,
No,
right?
it
It's what
takes
we're shooting
time.
for.
Yes,
Good balance,
exactly.
good amount of business, everybody working in the same motion, right?
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about how does mental fatigue affect financial decision making? Because I definitely think some of this burnout, like, it just drains on you. And then
Hmm.
how does that impact the financial decision making of a business?
Well, you're not going to be as creative and innovative when you're trying to make financial decisions about anything if you're tired and exhausted.
Yep.
So I always compare it in my life. Like, a lot of times, if you push and push your brain, you just can't come up with the idea or what you need to do. But then I leave work, and maybe an hour later I go running, and all of a sudden I've come up with the idea without thinking about it, right? Because I
Hmm.
gave my brain space
Hmm.
and I didn't keep pushing on it. And so all the research I've done on work-life balance, there we are most productive 2 to 6 hours a day. There's the more hours we work, the more inefficiency we create in our brain, because it just isn't meant for that. The other thing that we think is a thing is we can multitask, but we actually lose productivity when we multitask and we don't monotask and really
Hmm.
focus. And so if we want to really be creative and innovative, we have to block time to do those, important creative activities in our business, financial decisions that we need to make, without getting disturbed by email, without getting disturbed by text messages or Teams messages or whatever it
Right.
is. And the research is that we can work on something for about 45 minutes without being interrupted and get full productivity, but then we need like a 15-minute break to let our brain release from whatever we're working on, and then we can come back to it. And so we often think about breaks or doing things like that or working less hours like we're not a hard worker. It's actually riding with the flow instead of trying to go against it.
Yeah, I believe that. I definitely find I'm more productive and efficient if I set time aside, especially as an accounting professional. Numbers are kind of my thing, but then I do a presentation and I need to have space to just, okay, how do
Hmm.
I want to do this presentation? How do I want to present this? How do I, what do I want the slides to look like and say? And like, it's not the same. It doesn't come as quickly to me, right? So it takes time. And so I like blocking that out and being like, okay, there's going to be no distractions. I'm going to spend an hour. And I like your 45-minute things. I usually try to say,
Hmm.
okay, I want to spend an hour so I can make some progress, because it takes a while to get in that mode. But I can believe and understand the taking a break is really important too. And that's important because otherwise you don't get to that next level, or you can't get, completely finalize with whatever you're working on, because you get stuck. And then a lot of us, right, we put our head down and try to work harder, work more,
Yeah.
and that doesn't always help. So I love that, you talk about taking that break, and that's actually being a very good and productive, worker. So that's amazing.
Hmm.
I love
For
that.
sure. Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit about those patterns. So are there financial patterns that often signal a business owner is stretched too thin? Like, what do you see most often in somebody who would probably tell you they're not burnout, but you can see the signs?
Yeah. Well, when someone is stagnant in their business or declining,
Okay. Yep.
um, you usually see that they go inward instead of outward, right?
Hmm.
So, those are the times when you do need coaches and consultants and advisors to really help you. In small business that I've worked with, I find a lot of business owners are like embarrassed,
Hmm.
or they've taken money from family members or friends, and this is happening. And so they're churning out because they're trying to do everything that they can to save the business, which actually just keeps making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, it's very hard to be fresh thinking and have the energy that you need if you're doing that. But then you feel guilty because you've got other people's jobs on the line or money on the line or things like that. And that's where it's really important to have like third parties or someone independent from a financial standpoint, from a legal standpoint, from a subject matter expert standpoint, but also a coach just on you personally, that you can't be the one with all the answers all of the time. It's just impossible. And so finding those colleagues and people that understand what you do is so important. So you have a support, during that. If there's not actual money put aside for a coach or for
Right.
a consultant to come in and help you, that you've created a network online or through conferences or through networking you've done to help you through those times and make sure you're not hiding away.
Yeah, because you're not alone.
Mm-mm.
Everybody kind of goes through that. And maybe not everybody, but most people go through that. Most
Yeah.
business owners hit points where it's exhausting, more so
Mm-hmm.
than fun and exciting and, having growth. So it's definitely okay to get help and find the right resources to help you get to that next step, because sometimes it's just kind of that stopping point where you just need to energize and reestablish what you want to do next, because maybe what you initially planned isn't what's next and you need to change gears. But sometimes it's hard to see when you're kind of stuck in the
Yeah.
middle of it all.
Sometimes you're just in the weeds too much that
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard to even see what you need to do, and why.
Yeah.
Because you're just in the details. And when someone steps back, it really can be the path of least resistance that
Mm-hmm.
is right in front of your face, but you
Yeah.
just
You could be
need
like,
someone to help you see it.
it's so obvious now. It's like one of those
Yeah.
things, like, why didn't I realize that? But again, having somebody else have a different perspective can really be beneficial.
Mhm.
So we talk kind of about the downsides and, the unpleasant parts of burnout, which it is unpleasant, but let's talk about breaking the cycle. How
Mhm.
can business owners create systems that reduce burnout?
Well, first off, and this is the most important one, that you're very brutally honest with yourself. Like, what are your own habits that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and where did they come from? So I'll tell you, like in my journey, when I was 16 years old, my mom lost her business and then we lost our house and I started working 3 jobs, and everything was about like just surviving and keeping up and contributing, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
had plans for my college and everything that I wanted to be doing. So I didn't want that to fall to the wayside with all this happening. And I can look back at that time and say, I started developing really bad work habits, right? Because it was out of a need and being scared, but that fear never went away. So,
Mm-hmm.
Even if I have a job, I have side jobs, and there's always like a backup to a backup. Because once you see someone lose their business,
Yeah,
like
that's scary.
yeah, like, and you've lived it, you don't want to live that again yourself. And so, what I find is a lot of people blame their habits on the organization or the environment
Mm-hmm.
instead of really looking inward to see, am I working this way because of the organization or because of an inner need to people please? I have trouble saying no.
Right.
And where does that come from? I do have to go a few layers deeper to understand the originating belief system and how that got created. And that
Mm-hmm.
started creating my identity, right? I'm this really
Mm-hmm.
hard worker, and I'm gonna grind for you, and all
I'll
of
work as
those
many
things.
hours as you need, and I'll
Yeah.
right.
And it makes you feel good that people see you as a person that they can come to and say, can you work on this, Amy? And I'll say yes. So
Mhm.
those are all things I have to understand that have become my identity. And when you start trying to shift your identity to saying no to things when you're not
Mhm.
used to saying no, you really have to start creating a mindset in your head of like why you're doing it. Right.
Right.
I know when my energy's better, I show up better for myself and the people around me. So
Mhm.
I need to remind myself that every time I look at something and say, it, I have no space to do it right now, and talk to that person about prioritization or giving it to someone else or even delegating. Because sometimes it's not the organization, it's that I'm not delegating and I'm micromanaging. Where is that coming from? Where's the fear of losing my job coming from?
Mhm.
So, all of those things, like we see an outward behavior, but we
Yeah.
actually need to go a level deeper. And when the leadership individually does it and they start setting an example and are transparent about it, then the people underneath them feel like, oh, I get it. They're doing it. It's okay. So I can do it.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, I can still remember back when I was working, in corporate accounting, and I was working tons of hours, and you know, the list never ended, right? Didn't matter how many hours. I could
Right.
have worked about 10 more hours every day, and it's still, the list doesn't end. And I remember one day my boss was like, you should leave at 5 o'clock. It's Friday. He's like, you're not going to get that much more work done. And I think that was one of like the eye-opening times. And I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to be much more productive after this anyway. It's Friday. I'm exhausted. And so I feel like sometimes, to your point, it was the leader, right? He was like,
Right.
I'm not requiring
And
you
to
to
give you
stay.
permission. Yeah.
You're requiring yourself to stay for some unknown reason, because you're still not going to be done in 4 more hours. So,
Yeah.
it's like, go home, rest up. And I think that was one of the first times I was like, oh yeah, I might be better off going home and like being more productive when I come in, instead of working, weekends and then being exhausted on Monday when you get there because you've never really got a break. Whereas if you take 2 full days off and enjoy them, you're a little bit more like ready to go on Monday. Okay, I need
Yes.
to reset. I'm ready to go. And so I think, like you said, you have to look inward to see what are you requiring of yourself that is maybe not necessary to still
Yeah.
be seen as a good and hard worker, and still
Value contributor. Yeah.
value. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like people do have that problem, and I'm sure we all have different thoughts on that, from our own personal experiences, as you shared, but definitely have experienced that myself. So thanks for sharing that. Let's talk about some practical action steps. What's one thing a business owner could do this week to assess whether burnout is affecting their business financially?
Well, I would, so it's not reporting that's going to get you, right? It's
Mhm.
actual communication and really meeting with your team members one by one.
Mhm.
So if you're setting a meeting with a staff person and you're the CEO or the leader and they're not used to getting a meeting invite from you, um, it's important to be transparent to the organization. Is like, you're going to see a meeting invite coming from me. I just want to
Mhm.
better understand, what your day to day is like, and how you feel during your work, because we're working on our culture here. Like, being very transparent. We know it's not always perfect, but I want to dig in myself and
Mhm.
make sure that we get the feedback that will help us, and we want your input to do that. So that transparency, and also that, like, vulnerability of,
Mhm.
I'm trying to work on something, never done it before. It's going to be different. It's going to look different. I'm going to need your help to go on that path. Just doing that helps people feel like the organization is actually doing something, versus just saying they're going to do something behind closed doors. And then when they come out with it 6 months later, you're like, that didn't really solve my problem.
Right. Yeah.
So talking to your people is, you can think, but what I find when I go into organizations and do this kind of work, what you think is not what they're actually thinking, because you
Mhm.
forget what it's like to be in their shoes every day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the biggest compliments I ever hear is when our team gives us feedback to say, and we get this a lot because we were based on being, flexible, balanced, part-time work. It's just like I couldn't deal with XYZ if I didn't have this job or if I didn't have this opportunity, because you guys really do value, flexibility, and you don't just say it, you actually mean it.
Right.
You actually tell us, go take time
You-
with your kids because your kids are sick and we'll figure the rest out, and things like that. And I think it's important for business owners to be supportive of your team if that's what they
Mhm.
need, and be, again, transparent. Like you said, we try to be very open about it. Our leaders take time off as needed. It's everybody. Like, the whole goal here is to try to be more flexible and more balanced so that we can avoid the whole burnout as much as possible. Sometimes it still creeps back in, but yeah, I think that's one of the biggest compliments I ever hear when any of our team members say that, because it's not easy to achieve, right? It's hard.
No.
We really have to take note of it and make sure we're talking, with our team about how that works. So, um, I really love that. So, Amy, where can people find more information about you?
So on social media, I'm Amy Vetter, CPA, on every social platform. I have a website, amyvetter.com. And for all of our learning and courses and coaching, that's businessbalancebliss.com.
I love it. Business balance bliss. Everything we want, right?
Yes.
And you help people get it. I love that. And if you're looking for more information for Willow Virtual CFO, you can find us at willowcfo.com. We have a website and we have a link to our podcast, Cultivating Business Growth. So check out other episodes there. If you found this episode helpful, share it with another business owner who's in the messy middle of growth. Scaling isn't just about more revenue, it's about building something that lasts. Keep that momentum going, and we will see you next time.